So we are now firmly into 2023, which means a new year is upon us and a new year for Duel Links predictions. What's going to happen this year, new characters, boxes, events, what will happen in September for the new world, which is a very big topic this year because we've gone past the whole anime, and so what is next is all up in the air. But I'm going to try and predict what I think should happen, could happen, and let me know down below what you think will happen in 2023. And if you didn't know, 65% if you're watching this aren't subscribed. If you could do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, that'd be much appreciated. Anyway, let's dive right into the predictions for 2023. This will be fun. So let's start off with the characters. Right now, 2022 is a bit of a weird year. It kind of went back on some established patterns we had going forward. We usually got 4 characters from the new world, the upcoming world, and also the legacy worlds, all the worlds released beforehand. It was strictly 12 characters a year, and it was 4 from each pool. Last year, they did a bit different and only gave us 2 characters from the current world, 4 from the new world, and then 6 from the legacy worlds. And I think this year will be different again. I don't think they'll follow that same pattern because it really depends what they do in September for the brand new world. We'll talk about that in a minute, but let's go through my predictions for the characters for the year, and then we'll kind of skip out on the new ones because that's really dependent on what they do. So of course January will be Revolver coming, we know that one for sure. Rocket Man, he's here, Bolo Dragon. That'll be a very fun time, a very fun mini box. Then into February is probably going to be Shei Kurosaki based on the roaming event. It's a main box. We've seen some Xyz cards be leaked, and so that makes sense for an Arc 5 unlock to be way overdue, given it was meant to come back in August based on previous patterns, but I'll take it now. Then on to March is a legacy character. Last year was Bakura Dark Dimensions. This year, they won't go to Marek for DM World. They could either go for Tristan DSD, which would be kind of bad, or Shadi from DM World. I think of the manga characters, because that's the world that kind of it's based on, I think that makes sense to be a new character, and given there's plenty of a Shizu support, right, they could kind of throw that in there if they wanted to, which I don't think they should do, but it's a weird one to kind of predict characters from the DM World, right, because we're already into that filler territory, and we can't actually touch filler like the Orichalcos arc or the KCGT unless we go out of that manga timeline, which they could do for a new world, but would be very disappointing. Then into April, we've got a current character, so a Vrain's character. Last year we had Sora for Arc 5. This year will probably be Ghost Gal or maybe Spectre. I think Ghost Gal more likely because we've already seen Altergeist and Duel Links, and it just kind of makes sense to carry on with the whole anime timeline, at which point Ghost Gal coming next makes sense. It could be Akira Zaizen, Blue Angel's brother, but I feel like they don't want to waste a early character slot on someone that's that irrelevant, I guess, to the overall plotline, so who knows. Then in May we get no character, that's kind of usual. Into June last year we got a GX character. This year I think we'll get Mazar from Zexor, our next Baron character. I don't think we'll go all the way to Vector just yet, I'll talk about that in a minute, but Mazar coming in with Galaxy support, the Tachyon Dragon, that could make for a fun year and make people that are currently pissed off with Xyz Galaxy even more pissed off, because just more Galaxy support is going to trigger Reddit. Then into July, and this is the only one I feel like is super confident with is Serena. And Serena will come with a structure deck for Lunar Lights because we've already got a ton of them as super rare already. It just makes sense, the perfect deck to bring in an Arc 5 character. We know Lunar Lights, if you've seen their boss mods they haven't got yet, is so good. I think it's Leo Dancer. It's so good, so maybe that will be too broken for Duel Links. They might want to hold on for a bit longer, but we need to start going into more of the Bracelet Girls and the U-Boys. And Serena, in the timeline-wise, came before Yugo, so it just kind of makes sense to bring her now, and then have Yugo towards the end of the year. Then in August, we last year had the arrival of Paradox, who broke the pattern of having a current world character to cap off just before we got the new world. This year, I think they will go back on that, and we'll go back to a Vrain's character, and it'll either be Spectre or I. Now, I just makes sense because it's the boss of the show, but Vrain's hasn't got that many characters to bring in the first place that actually have cards in the anime, and so I think they want to save him into next year when they really need to use him, and so having Spectre come in very early, giving Sun Avalon some cool skills would be very nice. Then of course September, the new world, October, new world character, and in December, I am putting Yugo as the last character, the Synchro U-Boy, bringing Speedroids, clearing Synchro Dragon, and you'll notice there's no characters on my list for 5Ds or for Zexal, and I'm not sure where to slot them. Honestly, it's a real tough one because for Zexal you might think about bringing in Vector, or bringing in Nash, or bringing some more Baryons in, some more villains, and for 5Ds, where do you go? Do you go for more Dark Silence, go back in the past a bit? Do you bring more of the 3 Emperors or whatever? Or do you go for someone like Zone? But that then brings you on to the very end of the series. And that's kind of where we're going with this story, right? Is that DM World, 5D's World, GX, Zexal, they're all kind of approaching the end of their run. I mean, Zexal has tons more to go for, right? But it's all villains for the final arc. And so I think one of the options for the new world this year could be not a new world, but a major update, bringing in villain characters for every single world. So for DM World, you'd get Marek, for GX World, you'd get Darkness, for 5D's World, you'd get Zone, and that will be a very cool update, bringing more levels to previous worlds, and you don't really need a new world in September. It's just a marketing gimmick. That's all it is. It's a marketing gimmick, and at the moment, Duel Links is not really gaining that many new players, right? Konami would have transitioned their business model this year to be, let's try and keep the current player base happy and keep profits high, rather than let's try and bring in more new users. Of course, they will do throughout the year naturally, but really now, 7 years in, they should be thinking, let's try and keep the game alive as long as possible, because at some point, it is going to be phased out for something new. Now, what else could they do, right? Could they bring in a Rush Duel world, a Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's world? Technically, yes, but it would get very, very messy because the Rush Duel cards don't work in the same way as they do in the TCG, right? The format is completely different, and they play differently, and so all the Rush Duel cards would just suck. They would not be able to sell boxes on them, they would suck, they would just put them in the standard format, they wouldn't work. So could they go and give us a different menu on the home screen, right? And it says go to Duel Links World, or go to Rush Duel World, and do that, and do separate things? Yes, they could do that as well. However, that then gets doubly confusing because you're then supporting 2 games under one umbrella. Does it mean some months Rush Duel content, some months Duel Links content? Does that mean that you're now splitting the player base even more? Are you splitting the gem income even more? Are you now making it so that people that only care about the Duel Links World stuff, are they waiting a month for boxes to come out and then making you less money in the long run? Or are you better off just making a whole separate game for Rush Duel, having that be a thing and not being confusing to anyone as to why these 2 games exist under one umbrella? It's a weird one. I don't think we'll get Rush Duel in Duel Links or 7s or Go Rush. I don't think it's happening, but something needs to happen, right? Either a new world or a major update, and I'm leaning more on the major update. But what if they want to do a new world? What if they really want to do one? Do they go back and do DM World Anime Edition? Sure, they could do. If Cross Duel is doing so poorly, they need to kind of rechange their schedule, then it kind of makes sense. If they want to rely on Duel Links for another year, it makes sense. But it's really disappointing they did that. Now, they could do an OC Structures world, right? We've seen the characters been released into Cross Duel as NPCs, with voice lines and names and all that, so that could work. You know, giving TCG decks skills to make them more in line with Duel Links decks, right? Anime decks, right? Would be pretty cool, but when no one outside Japan knows what OC Structures is, they don't know. The game we first got them in never came out here, the manga isn't out here, and Cross Duel is not doing well enough to be, people to be familiar with those characters. So it's a real tough one. I personally prefer my own theory of the villains arc, right? The villains characters coming into the game, having this big major update, having maybe a big story mode to go alongside it, right? Big story update, because they do like going into that lore and making a new story. Since Dark Dimensions World, Zexal World, they've been building up to something, and this could be it. Building up to the end of service. Obviously it's a few years time down the line, but they will naturally be slowing things down into 2024, 2025, and so it just kind of makes sense, right? I'm not too sure. It's a real tough one to predict 2023 in Duel Links. But let's go back to things like events and structure decks and boxes and cards, what we see come to the game. Now, I'm pretty confident on my predictions from last year, just coming into this year, right? So, Dragon Mage, Shadows, Time Thief, they will all show up in some form in a main box, given we're getting Revolver and probably, Bootstick to launch and Strike a Dragon. Bringing in Dragon Maids just kind of makes sense. We've got Rolling Succession, which works with it, so there's the through line there if they want to do that. Tag Duel PvP won't come still. We saw it leaked right back in July with the whole Rank Duel icon, and it's not shown up yet. And so I thought if anything it would show up in this month, right, for Anniversary, a big major change to Duel Links. But maybe they save that for September, and maybe that's a big change to the game that brings new players in. Who knows? Magician's Rod still won't be freed on the ban list this year. It just won't happen. And for structure decks, if we go to Konami's website and look at the last year of decks, right, it's mainly been anime themed, right? The Relinquish one, the Cyburst one, the Black Rose one, the Utopia one, the Dark Magician one, and then the odd one out is the Eternal Knights, which is fine. It's an older archetype. I think they'll follow the same kind of pattern this year, and we'll get things like Armed Dragon Thunders as a structure deck. We'll get Ollie's Pendulum Dragon as a structure deck for the KCGT, the board's promo, which took the place of Utopia last year. That just makes sense. Altar Ollie's Pendulum Dragon, maybe Vortex Dragon comes in as well. That could be kind of fun. Of course, as I mentioned, a Lunalight EX structure deck for Serena's release just fits all the boxes. And I think if we look at the rarity changes, then our non-anime deck for this year will be Madolche. And that could come in January with the anniversary next week, right? Could also come into February, into March. We don't know, right? Rarity changes can come whenever. Usually there's about a 2-month gap, so it just kind of makes sense. It could also be in the Xyz box with Shay, right? With Raid Raptors, that also makes sense. But yeah, overall, 2023 is going to be very interesting. You know, to see what they do with Duel Links. It's a year we can't really predict super well. They could throw us, you know, out of nowhere and go, you know what? This new world is the Pyramid of Light world, which would make no sense at all. But it could happen. I'm pretty sure I dreamt about that the other day, which is a bit weird. But yeah, this has been a bit of a ramble, honestly. If you've stuck through to the end, thanks for watching. If you haven't, then you won't see this. But yeah, blimey, 2023. It'll be fun. It might not be fun. Let's find out together. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you all in the next Duel Links video. See you then.